11-year-old Harriet Welsh wants to be a spy. She secretly watches other people and writes notes about them, like, "That old man is ugly. I bet he cries when he sees himself in the mirror and wishes he was dead." Yikes, I heard New Yorkers can be mean sometimes, but that seems excessive.
Argo Font Book Review, Argo Font Book Review.
This review was commissioned through Patreon. Book 1. Harriet's nurse is called Ole Golly. She's a no-nonsense person with a fondness for quoting great literature. She's the only person who truly understands Harriet. There's an odd introduction to Ole Golly. She takes Harriet on a trip to visit her mother. Mrs. Golly has a mental disability. She can barely talk and hasn't left the room in decades. Ole Golly feels free to be openly rude in front of her mother because she can't understand. I think that's a weird introduction for Ole Golly. She's the only adult in this book who's competent and not mean to Harriet, and yet the first time we see her, she's being mean to her disabled mother. Shouldn't there have been a nice introduction for the nice character? School begins and Harriet meets her best friends, Scout and Janie. Scout's father is an author who's a failure at everything. Scout is forced to run the family food and finances. Janie is a chemist who likes making loud bangs to annoy her family. She hopes to blow things up someday. In her notes, Harriet is just as mean to them as she is to everyone else. There's a vote for class officer. Harriet and her friends try to run, but they can't get past the voting block of 3 popular girls, plus all the other kids who don't really care. After school, Harriet gets her spy gear and goes on her daily route. First is rich Mrs. Plummer. Harriet breaks into her house and goes up the abandoned dumbwaiter to reach her room. Mrs. Plummer talks on the phone and brags she's so happy she has enough free time to pick a hobby. Next are grocery store owners called the Dei Santis. They argue with their lazy older son Fabio, who cares more about borrowing Dad's truck than anything else. Joe the delivery guy eats a lot of food and gives it out to poor children. The Robinsons are 2 people who never talk to each other. They love showing off their fancy possessions to guests. And Harrison Winters is the most interesting person Harriet spies on. He owns 26 cats and makes bird cages for a living. Janie and Harriet's parents want to send them to dance school. Janie shows her displeasure by making a large explosion. Harriet shows her displeasure by standing up during a dinner and swearing. Harriet throws a tantrum, which she does a lot in this book, but it doesn't work because her parents are kind of terrible. Dad mostly makes fun of Harriet in a shy, sarcastic way because once he's finished working, he doesn't care about anything besides drinking and relaxing. Mom doesn't understand most of what Harriet does, so she immediately gives up and orders the nurse to take care of it. Ole Golly convinces Harriet to take dance lessons by saying female spies dance. Harriet spies on Ole Golly on her day off. She meets her boyfriend, Mr. Waldenstein. Harriet is astonished to see Ole Golly act like a giggling teenager, not her normal self. When Ole Golly returns, she's so happy that she quotes poems until Harriet is annoyed. Harriet's parents leave for a big party on Saturday night. They won't be back until late, so Mr. Waldenstein takes Harriet and Ole Golly out for dinner and a movie. They go right back home afterwards, but by the time they get back, it's after midnight, so it must have been the longest movie ever. Harriet's parents returned home early. They panicked because Harriet wasn't there. They're super furious, and Ole Golly is fired for being incompetent. I can't exactly blame them. Ole Golly should have at least written a note like, "Went to a 5-hour movie with Harriet, be back tomorrow." Ole Golly isn't too upset about being fired because Mr. Waldenstein just proposed to her, and Harriet is on the border of being too old for a nurse. Harriet is devastated they'll never see each other again. Book 2. At school, they do a Christmas pageant. The popular girl says their theme should be Christmas dinner. Harriet hates the idea, especially when she's made an onion. Hey, at least she's not one of the two kids playing Gravy. How do you even make Gravy a two-person costume? The Robinsons get a new sculpture, and Fabio smashes the family's truck. He's fired, but there's a happy ending as he reveals he used the truck to get a higher-paying job. There's a sad ending for Harrison as the city takes his cats away. Mrs. Plummer's doctor orders her to stay in bed for the rest of her life. Mrs. Plummer is horrified, even though that's what she normally did all day. This is where the main storyline of the book starts. Harriet accidentally drops her spy notebook. Her classmates read it, and they're furious about all the terrible things she wrote. Even Harriet's best friends hate her. Harriet's classmates torment her by writing mean notes about her. They even steal her tomato sandwich. Harriet is so upset, she fakes being sick for the rest of the week. Her parents try to help, but they don't really understand why Harriet had a special notebook for writing mean things about her classmates. To be fair, that is a little weird. The other students start the Spy Catchers Club. They build a clubhouse and put on a parade in front of Harriet. They shoot spitballs at her and dump ink down her shirt. Harriet stops paying attention in school and writes in her notebook all the time. Eventually, the teachers confiscate the notebook during school hours. Things take a nasty turn as Harriet decides to brutalize her classmates. She makes one girl cry because her father left the family. When a boy runs past Harriet's desk, she trips him and breaks his nose. She tricks two girls into hitting each other, throws a pencil at a girl's face, and cuts off another girl's hair. Harriet also throws fits at home and upsets the cook so much she quits. Dad gets upset, but not because his daughter's attacking her classmates. He's upset because his nightly martini was late, and now they have to pay the cook more. Dad is not a good parent. They take Harriet to a psychiatrist. She thinks he's dumb and weird. She tries talking to her two best friends, who are still mad at her. Book 3. Before I start this section, I want to note it's only 31 pages long. The entire book is 300 pages. That's not enough space to fully address all the storylines, so half the people Harriet spies on don't get resolutions. Neither do her parents or the school play. But hey, two of the spy people get happy endings. Mrs. Plummer is overjoyed when she's allowed to leave her bed again. Harrison gets a kitten to replace his cats. Aww. The Spy Catchers Club falls apart on its own when the mean girl turns it into a tea party club. Harriet gets a letter from Ole Golly, which solves most of her problems. Ole Golly tells Harriet to write stories instead of mean notes. She says Harriet should apologize to her friends and stop being stuck in the past. The teacher puts Harriet in charge of the school newspaper. I'm not entirely sure why. Harriet's been misbehaving to the point of near expulsion. Rewarding her with a platform to attack her classmates seems like a bad idea. At the very least, the teacher should supervise what Harriet writes in the paper, but no, the teachers don't do that. Harriet fills the paper with mean gossip and some nice gossip, like, "Congratulations to Janie, who got out of having to take dance lessons." After a few weeks, Harriet writes a general retraction where she disavows everything she wrote in the notebook. After this, her friends forgive her. The end. Post-book follow-up. While this is a good book, I did not like it. Internet culture has kind of ruined the story for me. Harriet is a major troll who wrote terrible things about people every day for years. When she finally gets blocked, she acts like she's an innocent victim. She's not, and at no point does she ever consider that she was in the wrong. In any other book, if a character kept an insult notebook for their classmates, that character would be the villain. I did not like the final third of the book. Harriet was overly cruel when attacking her classmates, and she never learns her lesson. She's not sorry for writing bad things about them. The book is very clear about the fact that Harriet's half-hearted apology is a lie. If I was one of Harriet's friends, I would ask for a real apology in person, not a vague statement in a paper. The spy angle to the story was interesting. It's neat to get a glimpse into the lives of these random people. The problem is that the spy stuff doesn't go anywhere. Harriet never talks to any of them, and they don't affect the story. I don't know why we spend a third of the book talking about people who don't matter. Maybe Harriet should have spied on her classmates instead. That would have worked better, and it would have been related to the main story. This book was shocking when it first came out. It's a very stark portrayal of a young girl who is mean and nasty to everyone. Some people found it refreshing, while others found it repugnant. For most of the book, I was okay with Harriet, although she throws too many tantrums for my liking. The final third of the book repulsed me. I didn't think Harriet redeemed herself, and I had a hard time seeing her as the innocent victim in all of this. I prefer the Ramona Quimby books, which do a much better job of portraying the young heroine in a sympathetic fashion, even when she does bad things. I was still on Ramona's side when Ramona messed with her classmate's hair. When Harriet messed with her classmate's hair, I was 100% against her. This book has not aged well. I can tell from the pacing that it was clearly written before TV was common, as you have to wait half the book before the story really begins. The upside is that it's one of those books you can reread multiple times and get more out of it on further readings. I suspect there might be some metaphorical or thematic value to the people Harriet spies on, but I'm not sure about that. I had to look up some of the stuff they talk about in order to learn, oh, well, that's a place in France, or, oh, that's some kind of soda fountain thing. The movie theater only has one movie that's in color, all the men wear hats, and of course they let kids run around all day without adult supervision. So, yeah, definitely an old-fashioned book. Overall, I didn't like the book. The writing is good, and it's not a bad story. But all the characters are mean and nasty, especially Harriet. That ruined it for me. I would probably like the book just fine if I could get behind Harriet as a heroine. I give Harriet the Spy a 3 out of 10.